So, hello everybody. We are Pina, Chloe, and myself, Daniel, and we'd like to introduce you to Dr. Katharina Besemer. Her areas of expertise are ecology, diversity, and function of freshwater biofilms. Here we see her at a younger age in the summer holidays in Austria, eating a quite big cup of ice cream. On this slide, you see her and her partner Michael. In the meantime, they become parents, and they are very happy to have their daughter Wanda now with them. She studied biology with a major in ecology at the University of Vienna in Austria.
Here you see Katharina with Tom Batin after a long night of research. She told us that one of the best and most important decisions she made in her professional life was to join Tom Batin's group. The group mainly studied biofilms. One of her hobbies is snowboarding. You can see her here on her snowboard in her ski suit in Obertauern, which is located in Austria. This is the passion that she brings with her besides science. Another very interesting hobby is kickboxing. The photo was taken after a competition with her team from her sports club. So, dear guests, please don't mess with her. In return, she loves gardening. This is a quiet and relaxing job because her daughter takes up all her time, which she is happy to do.
One of her favorite places is back home. Here you see the table set for Christmas. Another favorite place is Paolo, the favorite ice cream shop. In the picture you can see your nephew and your daughter, who are in Paolo. When we asked her what was the best compliment she got, she replied, "My daughter said, best mommy." A fun fact is that she rides a motorcycle these days, but back in the old days she used it to ride horses. Now she is one of the powerful women in science. Please give a big hand for Katharina Besemer.
So thank you very much for this really nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak here today. And I want to give an overview of aquatic biofilms. And I have to apologize because I've never worked on reservoirs myself. Most of the stuff I'm going to present today is based on research in small streams because this is what I'm most familiar with, and which I've worked most of the last years. Now, what's a biofilm? A biofilm is basically the slippery stuff which goes up on every wet surface. It's microbes enclosed in a slimy matrix of extracellular polymeric substances, the EPS. And most prominent of biofilms are the harmful biofilms, like when they build up on teeth, or if they grow in chronically infected wounds. They can grow on contact lenses, on proteses. Okay, you probably didn't want to know that about contact lenses, but yeah. On proteses, on catheters, and the probably best studied biofilm organism is Sediment-water aeruginosa, which chronically infects the lungs of cystic fibrosis patients. They can also grow on every man-made structure process known as biofouling, or also microbial, because larger organisms can be involved too. And they build up on ship hulls, thereby increasing their fuel consumptions. They can grow in pipes, even blocking pipes. They can act as reservoirs of pathogens in drinking water distribution systems. They block filters in drinking water treatment systems. So they can be quite a pest too. And this also shows one of the most prominent features of a biofilm. They're really resistant against antibiotics and disinfectants. So once there, it's really hard to get rid of them. But still, most of the biofilms are the beneficial ones. We use them in wastewater treatment. Biofilm-based wastewater treatment plants have many advantages over the usual liquid sludge plants because they have a high biomass concentration, a high biomass retention, and they don't use a lot of space. And then, of course, all the natural biofilms. The biofilms which grow on riverbeds, on stream beds, in lakes. And they are, in many ecosystems, they're a prominent form of microbial life. Especially, of course, in the small streams with their large surface to volume ratio. We have a lot of large benthic area and a large hyporheic area where biofilms can grow on a stream bed and within the stream gravel, as compared to a rather small water volume in a small stream. And we should also not forget biofilms growing on aggregates, as they are very important, for example, in large rivers or estuaries. And they're often regarded as mobile biofilms. This is a beautiful picture from my former colleague Birgit Huth. These biofilms are the drivers of the self-purification ability of rivers and streams. And also, they are the ones who take up all the carbon components which come into a stream. There are some numbers from outgassing rates from streams and rivers. There's 1.8 pentagram carbon per year are outgassed by streams and rivers. And considering that streams compose only a tiny proportion of the Earth's surface, that's a lot. So a lot of the carbon which comes into the streams from the terrestrial environment is just via there. So this makes the biofilms even an important part of the global carbon cycle. This is I just want to give a short introduction into biofilm life cycle. First, cells have to attach. Have to attach to the surface. Of course, hydrodynamic conditions, flow velocity, travel lengths play a role here. Also, physical surface properties and the conditioning film on the surface. This is a film of organic compounds which builds up very quickly on submerged surfaces. And organisms can use PD or motility through flagella to actively attach to a surface. This is what's called the reversible attachment phase. Then it's followed by an irreversible attachment phase when the organisms start producing extracellular polymeric substances to adhere to the surface. And it has often been shown in laboratory biofilms that this is accompanied by a major change in gene expression. So in this example shown here, the bacteria stop producing flagella. They don't need them anymore. They start producing EPS instead. And then the biofilms grow and form very distinct three-dimensional structures. These typical mushroom-shaped structures is something which is usually observed in Pseudomonas aeruginosa biofilms. So you will see them very often. It's based on laboratory biofilms. We observe a lot of very different structures in nature. And here it has been shown that the biofilms keep open voids and channels between these microcolonies, which increases mass transfer to the biofilm and helps to overcome limitation of nutrients and organic carbons in the biofilm. And then, of course, at some point, the biofilm has to start to disperse somewhere else to find new uncolonized wet places. And here in this example, this is an active dispersal process. At some point, some cells stop producing the EPS and start producing flagella. They get motile again. They can also produce substances which degrade the extracellular polymeric substances, the matrix in which they are enclosed, and then they break free again as motile planktonic cells which settle somewhere else. Additional to this dispersal, which can also be triggered from the outside by, for example, depletion of nutrients, biofilms detach all the time. They get eroded by the flow. They're kind of a viscoelastic stuff. If the shear stress exceeds a certain limit, a piece of biofilm breaks off and goes off with the flow. So pieces of biofilm disperse all the time without anything need to change in the environmental conditions. The sudden increase in shear stress, of course, can detach very big parts or the whole biofilm, like for example in a flat and aquatic system, or even if you have pressure teeth, so the flat on the teeth is exposed to a lot of shear stress actually. It can be can happen if it's exposed to chemicals which degrade extracellular polymeric substances, the matrix, and collision with particles come with a flow or grazing of larger organisms can of course also lead to detachment of biofilm, and then the biofilm goes with the flow and settles somewhere else. I also put the cell-to-cell signaling here. This is a very important thing in biofilms. The cells communicate. This plays a role even in a very early phase of attachment. My colleague Igor showed that even when there are only single cells on the surface, no microbial yet, these cells are not distributed randomly. So there seems already to be some communication going on. They are clustered in a way. Then microorganisms build up, and this signaling is very important in forming three-dimensional structures. So it has been shown, for example, that heterotrophic aeruginosa strains which cannot express some signal molecules, they form just flat biofilms. And then again, the signaling is important when the dispersal, this dispersal phase. Also, which is important is biofilm space, division of labor. Different cells take up different tasks. Even a simple biofilm like that, it's a monospecies laboratory biofilm. Strains will diversify, which take up different tasks in this biofilm. So these biofilms can show a surprising level of multicellular behavior. Still, this is simple biofilms. Biofilms in nature are not that simple. Okay. Okay, so for that. Biofilms in nature and aquatic systems usually consist of thousands of species. And these species, they span the whole tree of life. They are bacteria, of course. Sorry. Okay, we found the whole tree of life. We have found a lot of bacteria in there, of course. In our biofilms, archaea usually did not play an important role. They were usually a very minor component of the biofilm. And then there are a lot of eukaryotes. There are algae, most commonly usually diatoms. And green algae can also be in some biofilms be an important component. There are protists. There are protists grazing on the biofilm. There are flagellates, there are mover and ciliates, which graze the biofilm and can significantly alter the biofilm structure and also, of course, the taxonomic composition. And there can be fungi. They are often in ecological biofilms, or biofilms growing in stones, or epitomic biofilms, biofilms growing on fine sediment. Oh, thanks, great. There are minor components like. Okay, this is a graph from Mia Bengtsson, published in a review we wrote some years ago. And yeah, you can see all the phylogenetic tree here. Bacteria in green, all the eukaryotes here. I went through most of the groups already. Fungi were, somewhere up here, rather small part in here, but they can be very important on biofilms, grow on submerged wood or on submerged leaf packs. And there are also arthropods, metasaur, like insect larvae, which are kind of the top consumers in these biofilms. And I wrote this nice graph from you. It shows all the different organisms in the biofilm and the microbial living here. And a little bit like this. Okay. So these are really complex, highly differentiated communities, and they're often perceived as cities of microbes. And there is, of course, a huge potential of interaction in these microbes, in these microbial communities. There are trophic interactions, of course, co-metabolism of substrates, and I just want to go through a few of these in the next minutes. And also all these organisms can communicate. They produce signal molecules which can attract some cells, can repel others, or can change the gene expression of surrounding cells. And in a diffusion-limited ecosystem like the biofilms, these signals are of course much more likely to reach target cells than in a planktonic environment, where the signal molecules will get diluted very quickly. So we have a really high diversity community here. I'm sorry, it's not working. Okay, it worked really fine. So the next slide is showing, summarizing some of the interactions which occur between the major components of the biofilm, autotrophic algae and heterotrophic bacteria, and the influence of the surrounding environment. Of course, there has supposed to be light, because without light, no algae. And there are inorganic nutrients, algae need inorganic nutrients, but the bacteria can take up inorganic nutrients too. And under very low nutrient conditions, bacteria are often the superior competitors for nutrients. High nutrient concentrations often foster the algal growth. On the other hand, bacteria recycle nutrients from the dissolved organic carbon, from a particular organic carbon they take up. So this benefits the algae, which is a bit close to them. Algae produce exudates, which benefits the bacteria sitting close to them, because they are often much more bioavailable than the organic carbon which comes with the flow, which is often humic and highly recalcitrant. They can also fight each other. Bacteria can produce algae-soluble compounds, some algae can produce bacillus-soluble compounds. And all these interactions are going to influence the outcome of the taxonomic composition of this biofilm. Of algae versus bacteria, but also, of course, taxonomic composition of the algal part of the bacteria. And this has implications, for example, for the EPS composition, the extracellular polymeric substances, which then influence the biofilm architecture and viscoelastic properties, and I'll come back to that later. But it also has implications for the carbon flow through attachment. Of course, whether there are algae and how many of them, it determines whether a biofilm is net autotrophic or net heterotrophic, so whether it takes up or produces CO2. Usually, streams and rivers are net heterotrophic, but of course there can be algal nuts, which at least in the producing season are net autotrophic. But it also has implications for the carbon which comes with the flowing water. Bacteria sitting close to algae will largely use their exudates because they're more bioavailable than the humic substances coming with the stream or river water. So they can be less dependent on the carbon coming with the flow. On the other hand, bacterial biofilms, where not many algae are present, like because there is the forestry stream, there's no shadow, or because it's a hygroid biofilm, where there's no light at all, they will have to take out the carbon which comes to the flowing water, and thereby the availability of light and the composition of algae and bacteria in these biofilms will have implications on the retention and transformation of organic carbon within streams and rivers, and thereby having an impact on the flux of carbon through a catchment. And there are a lot of studies which looked at the influence of light, nutrients, but also temperature or organic carbon sources and others on the algal and bacterial compartment of the biofilm. And just one example of many, this is from Iller in Anna Romani's lab. They fed biofilms with glucose and put it on the light and in shadow and in dark. And it can be seen here by the arrows. If there's light, there's a lot of algal oxalates, and there's a lot of carbon coming from the algal oxalates into the biofilms. And in the dark, the flowing water, QC and QC is more important. Also, biofilms grown in light were more diverse and thicker than the biofilms grown in dark. And all glucose and light influenced the EPS production. And they also measured extracellular enzymes expressed by the bacteria. And they were also different between light and dark grown biofilms and between biofilms fed by glucose or not. So this even it also had an impact on the functioning of the biofilms. Okay. Okay, I will go a little bit more into the bacterial diversity of the biofilms now. For a long time, bacterial diversity has been kind of a black box because it's so difficult to bring many members of the bacteria into culture. And those which are really culturable are usually not that ones which are really important in nature. So with the advent of the new sequencing technologies, looks good, it is good. It's possible to open this black box, and you can now sequence the hundreds and thousands of species that we find in a single hand of grazel or. Yeah, great. We are now able to sequence, to analyze all these hundreds of thousands of species that we find in a handful of gravel or a handful of sediment. And this summarizes just some findings from streams we investigated in the last years. There are alpine streams, pre-alpine streams from Middle Europe, from the Boreal area, and the glacial or not glacial. And just on a very rough phylogenetic basis in the class level, we find usually that beta proteobacteria, the light green ones, are very important in biofilms. This is something which is very often found because beta proteobacteria are kind of the typical freshwater bacteria. Also an important part was the alpha proteobacteria. They are actually the most abundant often in marine systems, but they are also usually quite abundant in limnic systems and freshwater systems. And this is one of our systems of proteobacteria are often the most important part of the bacterial community. Alpha proteobacteria, some of their members are known to take up chemical substances or exhibit filamentous morphologies, which might be grazing resistant. Here in blue, the two ones are sphingobacteria and flavobacteria. They are from the Bacteroidetes phylum. And the members of these are known to degrade polymers like chitin or cellulose. And also in quite important, usually dark red are the actinobacteria, which were thought to be typical soil bacteria, but we know now that there are several typical freshwater lineages in there too. And even if you can now analyze all these species, our reflection curves usually look like this. these are the sequences, these are species we find, they don't saturate. This is actually from an old paper. This is for 4-part sequencing. Today with linear sequencing we can get all those mechanisms more sequences, but still, the deeper we sequence, the more species we find. And so it's still difficult to say how many species are actually there. But it's a lot. And just as a slide, then here you have the diversity that Linda Wilhelm, who was a PhD in our lab, found in glacial streams. The green ones are the diversities we find in biofilms, and the blue ones we find in water. And that's something we always found when we looked at water and biofilms in the same streams. The diversity in biofilms is high, but that in water is much higher. So it looks like the biofilms already select for a certain community which comes with the water. This immense diversity observed in microsystems and the metabolic plasticity, which is often observed in bacteria, has led to this assumption that microbial communities have a very, very high functional redundancy. That means it doesn't really matter how many different species are there, it doesn't really matter who's there, because they are going to fulfill the same functions anyway. But there are at least some indications that this might not always be the case. This is from a study from Hannes Peter in Last Hundred Lab, and he manipulated biofilm diversity and looked at the multifunctionality assessed as a set of extracellular enzymes. And this is the probability to sustain the function of all these enzymes, so the probability to sustain multifunctionality over a certain threshold. And not going into too much detail here, these are different ages and different treatments. The important thing here is that the high diversity treatment, which is the low one, usually had a higher probability to sustain multifunctionality than the intermediate diversity treatment, which is the red one here, or the low diversity treatment, which is the green one here. So it seems that for multifunctionality, diversity of microbial communities indeed did matter. And on the right side is the results from a study that we conducted in stream-type flumes some years ago. These are large flumes, and they contain bad forms, inducing a heterogeneous flow in there. So the stream-bed landscapes, they have crests where the flow is fast, and troughs where the eddies form. And we have homogeneous flumes. The heterogeneity of flow velocity shown here in yellow is just comes from the gravel, which forms the bottom of the flume. And then we have these bad forms, and we have more heterogeneous flumes down here, the most heterogeneous flume. You can see in red, this indicates very high flow velocity, and in the trough here, this low flow velocity. This is over just 1 meter of this stream bed. And we sampled from different positions in these flow landscapes. And first I looked at the community composition, and I found that these different flow conditions on the stream bed are reflected in the community composition. So there's different biofilm on the crests where there's very fast unidirectional flow, then in the troughs where there is a slower and multi-directional flow. And then Gabriel looked at the molecular composition of this organic carbon, which entered these flumes and which came out of the flumes. And this is the molecular composition we have visualized as this concavalent blood. And he looked what gets lost within the flume. So what's taken up by the biofilm. And he found that in the homogeneous flow fields, the flow landscapes, the biofilms probably took up the most abundant disorganic carbon compounds. While in the heterogeneous flow streambed landscapes, increasingly also rare organic carbon compounds are taken up. So this heterogeneity of flow and the turnover of communities, or communities within these streams, vasocosms, translated into a difference in resource use diversity. More different communities use more different resources. And then he applied causal modeling, and this path analysis showed that indeed the beta diversity, this is the turnover between communities from here to here, could explain the resource use diversity. So again, here you can see that it actually did matter how different the communities were, how many different species were sitting here in this flumes. And seeing that diversity indeed did matter for functioning of stream biofilms, we looked at the diversity distribution of biofilms in a whole stream network. This is a stream network close to Lunds. Here the Wassercluster, the institute I'm working on would be located. And we sampled about 120 sites within this stream network. And we expected to find the lowest output diversity in the small streams and the highest beta diversity between the small streams, because this is what we usually find for larger organisms. Organisms which move along the flow path in the stream network are unlikely to end up in its tips. So usually headwaters are dispersal limited and there's a low output diversity. What we found for bacterial biofilms here is actually found there was a lot of variation. They are on average highest diversity in the smaller streams. This is the catchment size, so we have the very small headwaters here and the larger streams here. The smaller streams actually had the highest diversity in biofilms. And there was a huge variation, of course, of diversity, and the more downstream we got, the more constrained and on average lower the diversity got. So down here we have quite similar diversity between streams and on average lower one. So we assume that this is attributable to massive influx of many microorganisms coming from the catchments, many of which might still just be in this biofilm because they have not yet died. They have not yet been outcompeted by organisms better adapted to the stream environment. While down here, where the microcosms, which have the microorganisms which have already grown in the water, get more important as compared to the influx from the surrounding landscape. There might be the typical freshwater bacteria, which have already outcompeted all these lesser competitors, which are have the possibility to survive up here in small headwaters. For the beta diversity, we found expected patterns. I just divided them into small streams and large streams. And this is the similarity between streams. It's a huge lot of dots, but the green ones, which are the larger streams, are on average more similar than the small streams, the blue ones. So we have the highest beta diversity, the highest community turnover between the small streams. And seeing that we have the highest alpha diversity and the highest beta diversity in the smaller streams makes headwaters an important reservoir for biofilm diversity. I now want to go more into their architecture of biofilms because they show so many really distinct architectures, beautiful structures on the microscope. And these architectures are also a good adaptation to flow. And flow is, of course, a very important factor in aquatic environments. And so years ago, Tom proposed biofilms as landscapes. Like this is a streamlet landscape. Here we have kind of a crest where there are directed flow and there are directed structures form streamers. These are finger-like protuberances, filamentous protuberances of the biofilm formed here, up here, and here in a kind of a trough, eddies form, giving us different architectures. And this is also from a paper from Tom Batin, where he looked at these biofilm structures under the microscope, under slow flow and under fast flow. And under slow flow, there are ripples and ridges, and as they grow, they coalesce and form these polygon-like structures. And then under high flow, structures are more directed, so this is the flow direction, there are more directed structures, filamentous streamers, and it forms a more directed structure in the biofilms. And of course, these architectures are influenced by the hydrodynamic conditions, but of course also by the taxonomic composition and also of the APS composition, which both also is determined by, for example, the presence or not of algae as larger building blocks. I want to go a little bit more into the streamers because they're so beautiful, and I colleague Richard made some beautiful pictures of them, and also because they really, can be really important in stream biofilms. They oscillate in the flow, and thereby can produce vortices which enhance the mass transfer into the biofilm, and thereby help to overcome limitation of nutrients and carbons in the biofilm. They have been shown to enhance particle retentions in the biofilms, by the movement to catch particles, and they might also be a preferred site for probable blending. And these are ocular. On the left, okay. Definitely will come on. Okay, on the left, you could see a biofilm as we observed them in a microcosm. And with the naked eye, you could see something oscillating there. And it looked like it would be filamentous green algae. But looking at them under the microscope, they actually found there was a backbone of bacteria and diatoms sitting on this backbone, forming a gallon-like structure. So this was it's really, I hope you'll see it. It's really a conspicuous structure. The diatoms probably being in a favorable environment, they are also in flow, which is probably good for nutrient replenishment, and they are on the canopy of the biofilm where light is optimal. And in this in large streamlight, or should I have taken back? Okay. No, didn't make it better. Okay. Yeah, the slide is mostly Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So you have this gallon-like structures that I mentioned. Stained with citron in green are the bacteria here, and you might see the fine. There's the red outfluorescence of the diatom sitting here. Here's a light microscopic image of the backbone of the bacteria and the diatoms sitting on these streamers. And these were streamers on the size of a few millimeters. And large streamlight microcosms sometimes observe streamers of several centimeters length. They could be really microscopic, like on this photos here. And my colleague Iris made a lot of beautiful pictures of them. And there are really very different structures. Like that one is a very big one, consisting mainly of autotrophic organisms, as can be seen by the red outfluorescence. And this one is kind of the opposite of this one. It's like a backbone of autotrophic organisms, which has been overgrown by bacteria. There might be some chain of diatoms in there, being the backbone. There are algae with entrapped blocks of biofilm, and most often observed chains of diatoms which get entangled and then form streamers or backbone streamers. And these diatoms were very important for the structure of our biofilms. And based on the photos from Iris, Seller and others made a mathematical model which described the biofilm formation based on the chain growth of these diatoms and their movement in the flow. These again are different microhabitats in this stream side mesocosms. This is on the crest where we have unidirectional fast flow. This is in the trough where we have multidirectional slow flow. And the diatoms, they start growing in chains, they move in the flow. And at some point they get entangled with neighboring diatom chains. and form these kind of breadlock-like structures. And they get streamers and form filamentous structures in the biofilm if they reattach. On the other hand, in the trough, the diatom chains can move in every direction. At some point, they get entangled with a neighboring diatom chain and form kind of a bow. Now they can only move in this direction anymore. And at some point, they get entangled with the third diatom chain and form like a Y-like structure, which is now very stable. And running this model long enough, it gives rise to structures which are surprisingly similar to what we observed in the stream-side mesocosms, with direct structures under fast and unidirectional flow, and the star-like or polygonal structures under slow and multidirectional flow. That I also want to go a little bit into the diversification of biofilm in the Z-axis, because biofilms are known to be places of strong gradients. They're diffusion limited, so organic carbon and nutrients which come with the flow have to diffuse through the biofilm matrix, also oxygen, of course. On the other hand, upwelling from the hypertrophic zone can bring of nutrient-rich or oxygen-poor water into the biofilm from below. So biofilms are known to be spots of strong environmental gradients. Also light, of course, gets attenuated if the biofilm is thick enough, so larger properties sit in the canopy of the biofilm. This is from an older study from Tom. In purple, there is diatoms here, and they dominate the biofilm canopy. Down here in green are the DNA of the bacteria, and in between, this is probably a thick EPS layer, with lectins. And having seen these conspicuous streamers, we at some point wanted to know whether this diversification in the biofilm canopy and the biofilm base layer is reflected in their community composition. So I dissected the biofilm by just ripping off the streamers under a dissection microscope with tweezers, and then scratched off the biofilm base. And of course, this is a very rough method of dissecting the biofilm, the canopy and base, but nevertheless, we could find some significant differences here. Some members of the Protobacteria and the Bacteroidetes phylum were overrepresented in the streamers, and members of the Autoprotobacteria and Gemmatimonoidetes phylum were overrepresented in the base layer of the biofilm. So it seems that they seem to be more competitive in different microhabitats. And one obvious reason, I think, which could drive this pattern is the presence of algae. Algae are more in the canopy, and they will their exudates will benefit the bacteria sitting in very close proximity to them. So I think that algae could actually be the drivers of this pattern. But of course, all the other environmental gradients here could also be responsible for this pattern. And also, just as a short note, there is not only taxonomic stratification, we also can see a metabolic stratification within biofilms. These biofilms in the microcosms, we fed in an experiment with radioactively labeled glucose as an example of highly bioavailable substrate, and with radioactively labeled aerobinos, which is not that good bioavailable. And then combining cryosections and micro-autoradiography, Gabe looked where glucose and the aerobinos end up in biofilm. And you can see pretty faintly probably here the biofilm base, and up here the biofilm canopy with streamer-like structures. And the black dots indicate the place where radioactive labeled substrate has been taken up. And you can see all the black dots are up here in the canopy. So the canopy of the biofilm took up all the glucose. The biofilm base hardly ever got any glucose because they ate up everything. Aerobinos, which is not such a preferred substrate, on the other hand, was able to diffuse through the biofilm and was also taken up down here in the biofilm base. They, of course, had kind of to take the leftovers of the biofilm canopy, and as the biofilm canopy did not like the aerobinos that much, the biofilm base took up more of the aerobinos. So there's a metabolic stratification within these biofilms too. And this, of course, was also influenced by hydrodynamic conditions. We grew biofilms under different flow velocities. Dense, thin biofilms show different patterns than fluffy biofilms grown on a slow flow. And I just found some weeks ago that also again in Tom's lab, Tom's lab, they made again a study of streamers and biofilm base, and again they just dissected the biofilm with tweezers under a microscope, and they found absolutely no difference in taxonomic composition between the biofilm base and the streamers. The biofilm base here is red and the streamers are blue, and you can hopefully see that what's abundant in the biofilm base is also abundant in the streamers, and there's a pretty good correlation of the abundance of taxa in biofilm base and streamers. Of course, the system they looked at is very different from the system that we looked at that time. It's a porous system, mimicking a porous system like sediment system or like something we could find in sediment in a stream bed. And one interesting thing is that there are streamers at all, because actually streamers were assumed some years ago to be something which forms on a total flow, not on a laminar flow. And of course in this porous system there is laminar flow. But still we see streamers here in blue, the biofilm basis is red, and they did form this system. And I think the obvious reason why there is no difference in taxonomic composition here might be that there is no light in the system. Of course, in a porous system like a sediment, there would be no light too. And this might actually be the reason why there's no taxonomic difference in this case. And although I'm looking at the streamers in porous system, I want to mention this study which looked at the importance of streamers for clogging in porous system. They grew biofilms, Joshua and others grew biofilms in this porous system, and of course the biofilm builds up on the walls of this porous system, and the flow rate stays more or less the same. At some point, there are very thin streamers which form, and then these streamers grow very rapidly, probably by catching cells from the flow, and very quickly this porous system is clogged, and the flow rate drops very strong in a very short time. So streamers also play a role in the clogging of sediments. Of course, this is a laboratory system. These are very well-fed biofilms. In this case, they used just stream water, and the system never clogged. So I also used microbes with plasmids in there and never had clogging. So our stream water might just be not nutrient-rich to allow biofilm growth, which is I don't clog the system at the normal time. But yeah, in a porous system, the streamers help clogging the system. And this brings me to the next point: role of biofilms in clogging and biostabilization of sediments. I have to rely here largely on work from others. A lot of studies which have been authored by people here in Stuttgart. Since I have not worked on this topic, and probably 20 years ago, Tom Bottin found in a study how a relationship between biofilm biomass in a system and the leakage coefficient of the sediment. And this is something which is, of course, important in reservoirs, damped systems, because if a river is damped, the flow velocity is much lower, and the sedimentation rate gets high. So where there was a kind of wheel bar before, the lower flow velocity will now cause small sediment particles to sediment, there will be a high sedimentation of small particles, and this already can clog a system. And then, of course, there is biofilm going to grow on the system, and this will permeate the void space and cover particles and embed particles, and thereby reduce the infiltration of the sediment. And this clogging in reservoirs is often something which is undesirable, because the exchange between the surface water and the groundwater decreases, and this can have negative impacts on the groundwater level and on the water which is taken from this groundwater, like drinking water. And Tom here found that following impoundment, at the river Danube in this case here, the impoundment happened, the leakage coefficient, which is the ratio between hydrologic conductivity and the sediment thickness effect decreased dramatically, and he identified the first phase and the second phase. And he could also observe biofilm growth paralleling this development. So that here we see a relationship between impoundment of a river, biofilm growth, and clogging of sediment. And these are some microscopic pictures from a study of Hoffmann and Kunkel, who looked at clogging in Lake Tegel. And you can see how this, you can see the embedded particles, the algae and bacteria and the EPS matrix embedding and surrounding particles. While while clogging is usually not something desirable, biostabilization is something which we want. It's an ecosystem service provided by Biofilms. Because erosion of the sediment can cause channel incision or bank erosion. Often below dams, the flow velocity is higher and can cause channel incision. I think this is the case on several parts of the river Danube. So, biostabilization by Biofilms is an ecosystem service which we like to have and get from Biofilms. And this is from a study from Elisa Viñaga at the Sloan's lab, where she looked at the influence of microbes on the biostabilization of sediments, and so she drew cyanobacterial mats in large flumes, and found that the existing models for sediment transport according to shear stress did not do a good job by explaining the behavior of these systems, but rather the biofilm behaved like an oscillating membrane. So shear caused this membrane to oscillate, and at some point when the shear stress exceeded certain limit, the membrane failed and ripped together with some trained sediment particles and went off as a flow. And here I tried to summarize some of the factors influencing biostabilization by biofilms in aquatic systems. And I checked exactly this from papers, mainly from people from Hebrew Stuttgart. So I hope I got the main points out. The extracellular polymeric substances produced by the microorganisms influence the viscous properties, adhesiveness, and the biostabilization potential of the biofilm, which then translate into sediment erosion. Of course, there are the physical zoning with thermodynamic conditions, the particle size, the density, mineralogy, and organic carbon content of the sediment, which all have an influence, but more important now for me is the biofilm impact. And this EPS quality and quantity is, of course, influenced by the taxonomic composition of the biofilm. As a rule of thumb, algae are often assumed to produce more polysaccharides, and proteins are more produced by bacteria. Of course, there are exceptions, and also depends on the taxonomic composition of the algae and of the bacteria. And proteins are assumed to act as kind of cross-links between the polysaccharides. So the taxonomic composition, the ratio of algae versus bacteria can have an influence on the quality and quantity of the extracellular polymeric substances, which then has influence on the biostabilization potential. And of course, the light and nutrients, as I showed before, influence the taxonomic composition of the biofilm and presence of algae or not. And I also put the macrofauna here because microfauna can produce extracellular polymeric substances itself, and thereby contribute to the biostabilization. But of course, macrofauna can also graze the biofilm, which is disrupt the biofilm, and thereby reduce the biostabilization and the clogging. And it's also shown that healthy fauna of arthropods can actually prevent clogging in some systems. And I also put the pollutants here because they can have, they can of course can influence the biofilm, the autotaxonomic composition. They can count a biofilm, there's some less biofilm. Some microorganisms can react to some toxic substances with more production of EPS, but more often probably the EPS matrix will also be damaged, and this then means there is less biostabilization by the biofilm and more sediment erosion. And this again can then lead to a resuspension of pollutants which have already been bound to the sediment and buried in the sediment. So this is a kind of negative feedback cycle. So I don't know how long I'm supposed to talk, but I think I'll stop here. Okay, good. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Besemer. I'm wondering whether there are any questions from your side. Yeah, please.
You showed that with increasing altitude, you had a higher diversity than in the lower altitudes, correct?
Or
in the upper catchment,
they're the higher
higher than
yes, but actually the difference in altitude are not that big in that catchment, and we also found a different study, which I showed shortly with this summarizing plot. In a different study where the difference in altitude were much higher, we found lower diversities in the uppermost streams. It's a little bit different systems because the study where we found lower diversity at the higher altitudes, we really went up to the level of stones and snow, while the study showed this is all forested area. So we started below the tree line, and this might make a difference. Okay, of course, altitude did correlate with the diversity, but catchment size correlated better. So we rather rejected the idea that it's the altitude which is driving the system.
Okay, my question is also related to the functionality, whether you see the same pattern also for functional diversity, or are the systems more or less diverse in the altitude?
Okay, I have to dig my memory now because actually we did look at the functional diversity. Linda Wilhelm looked at the function of the biofilm in this other study where we looked at biofilms at different altitudes. I try to remember now. It's some years ago. I'm supposed to know that. As far as I remember, there were the U uptake from different substances. So she measured the U uptake feeding the biofilms different substances, like leachate from leaves, which are only present, of course, below the tree line, and leachate from algae, which are also present above the tree line. I should remember. I think there was more uptake below the tree line of both algal leachates and leaf leachates, but I'm really not sure anymore. So I think, of course, you would assume that there's a functional diversity gradient there. I'm sorry, I would have looked at it and that.
Maybe there is an opportunity to talk during the evening and to see a bit more about the details. Any other questions? Yes.
So, thank you very much for a very interesting overview of your work. So, I'm actually wondering, so you showed the streamers and you are working with streamers, I guess. Yeah? And the streamers, actually, this oscillations actually seem to be determined by the weight it is, actually, the oscillation frequency of this determined by the weight it is generated by the streamers itself. And do you actually think that this is kind of a survival mechanism for the biofilm, not only to detach for the drag force, but also to provide some nutrients to the base level, so that actually they don't die, so they don't detach from that. Did you measure timely actually how this actually the base layer and or do you know any study who measured the time how the community in the base layer and the streamers had changed actually at the base and the streamers, all the streamers change over time?
No.
to see the
No,
adaptation?
this was just one point in time. We looked at different streams. So no, I have no. We didn't do a study where we looked at the change in community groups. Oh, wait, I don't know if listen. Actually, for one experiment, we had at least 3 time points, and there I remember that the communities got more similar. So at very major biofilms, actually, streams are more similar to the base. But I have to say that the green algae were kind of overgrowing the biofilm. They overgrew the biofilm, including the streamers. You have no picture here, but you could see the remnants of these streamers with the bacteria and the diatoms entangled in a net of green algae. So you kind of lost this very conspicuous streamer structure at the same time. So our communities got more similar, but yeah, at the same time, you kind of lost the streamers.
Any other question? So I would have one. You showed some examples or some results from the investigations on bed forms and the different communities of biofilm in the bed on the bed forms. The difference on the crest and the trough. Yes. I'm wondering how long did it take until the biofilm grows? Because this must have been very, very fast because these bed forms usually move. This is nothing but it's static.
It's an experimental system, so you don't move.
Okay, so you have a rigid boundary. You just made the geometry to get different flow velocity distributions.
Right. It's extremely close, so the bed forms are actually made from wood.
Okay.
And covered with foil, and then there is a single layer of stream gravel on them, so they're not moving.
Okay.
That's one. And we did that because we did not want to have exchange with the hyperbaric zone, because otherwise you would have a massive flow through the gravel bar, and that would have, of course, have made very big changes.
You would have had both the exchange with the hyperbaric zone and the motion of the bed form itself. So the particles, they move, and you don't have a stable system where the biofilm can grow.
Yeah, well, the gravel in these streams, it's about this size. So it's not moving that fast.
Very large.
Yeah, it's we have some fine sediment in between, but it's really gravel from fast flowing streams. It's not to say, it's a lot of stones this size. We filtered them through a mesh, so we had a defined size of stones in there, but we took what's average for the stream and then added some fine stones. It's not really fine sediment, it's still stones in between. But it's what it costs gravel. It's not moving that fast.
Okay. Yeah. Any other question or comment, Richard? Please.
Yeah, that was a really interesting talk. It was cool to learn about sort of the architecture of these biofilms. And I was just wondering if your group has looked at, or if you know of papers that have looked at the effect of hydropeaking on these kind of biofilm assemblages. So the river that I'm working on right now experiences, meter fluctuations in water over short time periods. And especially in the downstream reach, it gets really turbid. So that area that's close to the surface is really important, I think, for the whole ecosystem production. And just wondering, if there's functional differences, or if anyone's looked at sort of biofilms that are in and out of water, or maybe that doesn't happen. I don't know.
Well, of course, we did not have hydropeaking because we're working in small streams. There, of course, floods comes a little bit close to that, but then the biofilm is just removed and buried and it's gone. So, large rivers where usually hydropower dams stand, they don't have any light at the bottom, and also if it's fine sediment, I think it moves a lot. Actually, I don't know how much work is done on these biofilms at the bottom. I know that there is quite some work done on the aggregates in these large rivers, because this is the place where also algae can live. There in the turbid river, there is no light down there, but for the suspended aggregates, they are exposed to light at least sometimes. And the water picture I showed before from David Liu, she did a lot of work on the suspended aggregates and the community sitting on there. So I think it's more, I guess it's tall and large water bodies. It's more work about suspended aggregates as mobile biofilms than really biofilm on ground. Although it's just you have a huge water volume there and a comparatively small venting area, and there's small streams the other way around. So the biofilms are more important in small streams than in large streams. There's a paper from also from Tom Bachan's group, the Wendledorfer from similar 2 years ago, where he looked at the formation of biofilms and the formation of aggregates under different hydrodynamic conditions as probably different kinds of biofilms which form under in different habitats and under different hydrodynamic conditions.
But maybe your question also focuses a bit on the area which is going dry and wet. Yeah, so not only the hydro, because if you talk about meters of hydro peaking, then we have really large areas. But even with natural fluctuations in the discharges, you have areas which are falling dry and then are wet again. And this is in a low flow depth, means there is light, even if it's a bit turbidity or turbid. So is there any influence that you can see from that drying? Is it dyeing the biofilm, or does it make it even more stable, or any changes due to the changing, not hydrodynamic, but wet and dry conditions?
We haven't looked at that in a study, just from looking at the streams that I'm familiar with. In the Dunster-Seebach, which is the stream which has been studied a lot over the last tens of years, close to the station where I'm working now. If there is no flood for an extended period of time, first there's very thick biofilm growing. There's a lot of diatoms, some fluffy brownish stuff which is not very nice to look at. Then come a lot of grazers, mainly coronary larvae. They really like sea urchins, they eat everything, and sometimes you can only see the coronary larvae sitting there in between. It can be completely white because they eat everything. And then after that come a lot of encrusting blue algae, because they kind of go into the stones and probably evade grazing. So if there hasn't been as flood for an extended period of time, lots of the streams in the surrounding show some bluish or reddish or greenish colors which cannot be even scratched off. This is interesting logic.
Any other question or comment on the biofilms, on the interaction of biofilms? Yes, please.
Thank you, very nice talk. I have questions about how to prevent the bad biofilm or remove some bad biofilm.
Yeah, that's an unsolved problem. It's really difficult to take them. They're protected by their slimy microbes, and also a lot of the studies made on antibiotics have been on autotrophic cells, and if they express a completely different set of genes, it's not that surprising that they don't work on biofilm bacteria anymore. But it's an unsolved problem. It's relatively easy for your teeth because you can brush them mechanically, but you can of course not do that within your body. For ships, that's actually what's done. Take the ships out of the water and brush them. It's really difficult to get rid of the biofilms with chemicals. They usually just don't care. And also for drinking water, you add chlorine or something, and you kind of reduce the biomass, but you don't get rid of it. And then you don't want to have all the chlorine in the drinking water. Also it's just form more resistant biofilms at the time. It's an unsolved problem. With ships and pipes, there are a lot of research is done on materials which might just be unattractive for microbes to settle on. But that's very difficult too, because as soon as there is this conditioning layer of organic molecules, it seems to doesn't matter anymore what's under this layer. They attach anyway.
So even a special coating would be really important.
Well, there's a lot of research going on this topic, but I think it's not very successful yet.
Yeah, just to comment on this I think it's also like the temperature, the moving conditions, geography changing the flow. It's very difficult to use to target. I think the different microorganisms which will be living there. I think it's very difficult solutions for something for the generic, producing something generic.
Any more questions, comments? Not at the moment. So then thank you very much, Katharina Besemer, for your